Pooya, we're sitting in front of a rare example of a French 18th century provincial harpsichord. Could you give us an idea of what you know about its maker, its origin, where it was made, when it was made?
Yes, thanks for being here first. And this was made by Jacques Marinis from Avignon, South France. We know that he was a priest, and which is rare but not quite rare, because there were some priests I know making instruments in Europe, even in Hungary, making clavichords, definitely also in Germany and Spain, everywhere. So this is another example of a priest making fine instruments. I don't know what else he made, perhaps organ too, but yes, this was made in 1768, and I was lucky to have it in my workshop. There are two more French instruments in the collection, but this one, I couldn't afford it, so I called my friend and client, Peter Karsten from Brunswick, and he decided to buy this one in an auction in France.
And it is in fact signed somewhere, is it the maker's name?
Yes, on this board here, we can't see it, but from below when you remove it, it is possible to see wonderful handwriting, which says that it was made by Cordelier in Avignon in 1768, and Cordelier means actually a priest, basically, or a humble, what do we call it, a modest, a monk, a modest way of calling oneself. He hasn't exactly written Jacques Marinis, but it's written very small Marinis, and he has tried to erase it. It's a bit
over modest.
Yeah, a bit like that. Actually, Germans were also more or less like that. Some of them didn't sign. It's more in capital cities, like I have some experiences with the forte piano, so it's written very big here. The name of the maker, also in London, in big cities, but in some provincial places like South France or in South Germany, and perhaps even Poland and Italy, there were many makers who didn't even sign. That was an 18th century virtue, actually, I think.
Would it have anything to do with the guild system that actually prevented makers from putting their name on something unless they were a member of a particular guild?
Well, I think that is more for somewhere like Vienna. I know about Anton Walter and all this stuff, but a priest wasn't prohibited to make musical instruments in South France. This is not. I think it's not the case.
Right. Back to the instrument. It arrived in your workshop to be restored. Can you give us an idea of what condition it arrived in?
Well, the condition, I would call it good condition, but it had lots of weaknesses, problems that I had to face. Especially this area was very out of order due to the shrinkage of the case. And I'll show you photos of this. You will see that lots of this gesso coat was taken off completely here and there, and this area back there. The painting itself was really needed a lot of restoration, and the soundboard was in really bad condition. There are worse cases. This one was coated with lots of dust and dirt and oil and whatever everybody used on it, I don't know. And I could remove it without sanding or using any solution or something. just with scalpel, very carefully removing all this and repairing numerous cracks. But I was lucky that this is a French harpsichord, so the underboard, the bottom board was easily removable, and it was removed before, and so the gesso all around that area was also completely out of order, so I had to add layer of gesso and then coat it with casein and all the stuff. So then I had to make the music stand, and I used a set of new jacks. The original jacks are here. I can show you. Are stored here. Yeah. These are beautifully made, but for some reason it was a better idea to make a new set, and especially because it's now like a showcase. It's on display, like a museum piece within the instrument, unless the stand goes, I don't know, lost somewhere, which I hope it's not going to be the case ever. And I use the plexiglass on it, so you can put your music on it, or tuning hammer or anything, and these are there. They can be used again if needed, but I don't think it's really that needed, because I really wanted to do a neat job without losing any of the historical substance. So I used the new jacks, and I fit them in the original jack slots, and so everything is precise. But it's not a good idea to do it on an instrument that has the original jacks and you don't have any space to store it anywhere. So I was lucky that we had this drawer here.
Yeah, you did say though they were well made. Was there a reason that you really thought, well, I can't?
Yeah, because the tongue goes out of order easily. It's fragile. There was a design from this maker which I haven't ever seen anywhere else. The jacks are very thin on this side, on the right side, and on the left side there's plenty of wood, which is good for having a stable part for the dampers.
Yes.
It's quite good, but this one made the jack too fragile. It's good to if it works, but when you have to fix something on it, it breaks easily. It's like a piece of paper, so tiny little thing. So it was a good idea to keep it unrestored, original condition, and these are working perfectly.
Yeah, good idea. So I think you told me earlier on that there was a slight problem, well, not a problem, but the painting has a story behind it.
Yes, the painting, well, my friend and I started to to work on the painting. Of course, I did everything alone on the harpsichord itself, but the painting, I got some help for the missing parts. I did the cleaning of the painting, which itself is a time-consuming job. It took many hours because you have to start little by little, and then you should try different solutions. Some of them don't work, some of them can easily damage the painting, so you have to go step by step, centimeter to centimeter. And then I was working on it, and then I realized that there is a photo of this very instrument from 1926, and showed that it was painted over an original painting. The original painting is very beautiful, absolutely fine, but I call it vandalism actually to do that. And
why would one do it? I mean, do you have any ideas why it was done?
Well, I think we have seen that instruments were modernized at some point, and this process is something that they thought in the 20th century we know more. And we do this different, like we see like Wittmeyer harpsichords in the 60s or 70s, a total new design for the harpsichord, the Jacques and this and that. But I don't understand why the painting, which is already there, why should you pay another painter to paint almost in the same style. Which is Rococo anyway.
Yeah.
And some Italian harpsichords which were not painted, I know they arrived in France and were used as continuing instruments, and they were painted. I restored one of those coming from the same collection or atelier from Mr. Solomon in Paris, who sold prestigious instruments to musicians exactly 100 years ago. And so I don't know why they thought this one should lose the painting and then something else should be painted on it. It doesn't reflect the time, 20th century, you know. It could be something modern, I could imagine. But anyway, it's none of my business. I just keep everything as original as possible, and my business is to keep the historical value and make such instruments playable without losing their history.
Well, it's certainly a very convincing painting, so...
Yeah, we thought at the beginning it can be original. I wasn't sure that it's original, but some other painters, some professionals, they also were skeptical, and then we found this photo that showed that it is definitely something added, or it can be even perhaps done a few years after purchasing the instrument from Solomon. I mean, I cannot say that it must have been done by a Solomon trusted painter or something, because the instrument was at that condition. It looked like that, with all these huge hinges, which I don't like so much. I don't
mean hooks, yes.
Hooks, sorry, yes. All these, but yeah, it can be done later.
So, and how about the keyboards? They are original, presumably?
No, the keys are not original, I think, from the mortises that I could see, and that they are from oak, which is quite unusual for a French instrument. Though we can imagine things from South France being influenced by Italy. But I have the impression that this is not the work of an 18th century master. This is already done very good. I think it must have been done in the late 19th century, perhaps 1880s. This is my impression. But again, also none of my business, because I left it as it is.
Yes.
I just restored it. I had to replace some leather inside and some cloth. But the keyboard is beautifully done, actually, and it works. But the key frame is definitely original, I believe.
Good. Yes, I had a look at the keys earlier, and I'm surprised that you say they are possibly as late as the 1880s, because the naturals are really quite worn out on the lower manual. So in that case, it must have been played a lot.
Must have been played a lot, yeah, exactly, and quite harshly, perhaps.
With long nails.
I don't know about nails, but it's lovely because it shows that the instrument was played perhaps in the 19th century and definitely in the 20th century and now 21st century.
Yeah, and also if I can just make a comment as a player, the wear is in the front of the keys. If you think it was a modern pianist playing with their long fingers going back between the sharps, the wear would have been more evenly over the keys. So someone's been playing with quite a good early keyboard technique.
Yeah, perhaps, yeah. And yes, the restoration was successful and happily done from below because of the bottom board, which I could remove. And the hitchpin rail had some problems here. I had to take the treble part of the hitchpin rail out and clean and glue it back with fish gelatin glue, which is keeping the tuning fantastically. And the soundboard parts of it was terribly out of order. It was like it chips, I would say. So I could remove it.
You took the treble part out. You don't mean
the
to say
treble part of the hitchpin rail. Yeah. The hitchpin rail, and
of course,
then I could match the color, so it's not really that visible. And put the pins back. Well, the tuning pins are original, and the nut is original. Some parts of the nut had to be re-glued, and the bridge also parts had to be re-glued. But it's fun, when you have the bottom board off, you have access all the time. But otherwise, I had to remove the whole hitchpin rail and do all this surgery, which I've done many times, but luckily it was not necessary on this instrument. And there were so many cracks that I had to repair, something that also took a lot of time was not the routine job like on the jacks, quilling. I used the wild turkey quill and or cleaning here and there, but it was on the surface of the instrument. It took a lot of time also.
Mm-hmm. Well, the soundboard certainly looks very good now. The rose is presumably original?
Yes, I think, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, what else do you think is notable about this instrument? Were there a number of provincial instruments, or is this really one of very, very few? Provincial outside Paris, of course.
Yeah, well, there are some. There are some of them from the 17th century, and but basically, anything from France is rare to have. All because of the French Revolution, which caused all this, hatred towards the Ancien Regime, and they destroyed everything they could, especially in Paris. In everywhere. The most criminal story was in Vendée, but I don't know if there were so many instruments there. But it appears that this was maybe safe in Avignon until it came to Paris to Solomon's workshop and showroom. Or my Pierre Rouelle French harpsichord, which actually looks provincial, but it's a simple walnut harpsichord, which also could escape from the revolution, perhaps because it didn't have any painting or such beauty to get all that Ancien Regime label. So it was like perhaps put somewhere apart.
One of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Perhaps you could give the viewers and listeners an idea of cultivation ethics when you're restoring something. How far do you go?
Yes, well, it's a very good question. When I was much younger, I was too worried and too cautious about this, and left sometimes things behind, and always said to myself, I have to be very cautious. And it was maybe a bit too much, because then later I had to redo those things. But then I realized I should restore a bit more, but I never over-restored anything. And over-restoration is, for example, that I've seen sometimes some people even clean the keys, not the front keys, but the wood itself, where you don't see it. It's lots of dust. You can easily remove the dust with a brush and vacuum cleaner. You don't have to make it wet or sand it or something. Or, for example, you don't have to when you see some of the pins, tuning pins are there, and it doesn't keep the tuning well, you don't have to make a new set. You know, well, actually nobody makes them anymore now. They buy very cheap, the machine-made ones, and they apparently work. But I wouldn't throw out anything. Nearly everything can be kept except for dust, and sometimes even strings if it's late fortepiano or something, but there are usually no original instruments of the time with the original strings. Even if they are, you cannot usually use them because of so much rust and oxidation. You know? So you can keep them. It's always the danger of losing them, because we keep them somewhere in a drawer, and then we get old and the instrument is sold. You know. And some people who are still alive, they deliver both to the new owner, which is great. But in many cases, nearly everything can be kept in its original. If there are a few pins that you have to take out, like hitch pins, it's so out of order, it's broken or something, you can take it out and put a new one. And it doesn't ruin the historical value of the instrument. And what you get is that you pay your restorer and you get the instrument in playing condition. So many people listen to it, so many people can play on it and watch the videos. That's wonderful. But if we go to a purist form of view, that no, nothing should be restored, everything should be left as it is, you know, sometimes you should, you know, it's like a holy relic, like a Cristofori fortepiano made 300 years ago or something. If you maybe start doing something, then you have to change this and that and that and that, then perhaps not. But when you see, like in most cases, the instruments were restored before, like a house. You have in somewhere in England, and then you see so many people lived in here. So you can still restore it and keep it.
Yeah.
And what is the best idea? Just to leave it. If you just leave it, okay, it's under sun and rain and snow, it will go more out of order. These, okay, let's say in museum depots they are safer, yes, but museums don't have so much space anymore now, and they are not more interested to get these, you know, tons of these instruments. But we can make them playable and make them available, like the owner of this instrument, like myself. Well, I have a museum workshop here, as you can see, so many instruments, and people come here from music schools, universities, and from abroad, and they play, or we talk, or we record, we do many things. But this instrument is not also going to be in a
museum.
No, I mean, it's not going to be just in private hands, like in four walls belonging to someone. He's going to use it in a museum, and then again for some projects or some people who contact him, he makes these available to them, which is perhaps the best that can happen to an instrument in the 21st century and later. Instead of just saying, oh, this is an original, let's just leave it, restoring it will destroy the value. It's not going to destroy the value if we really take many things into consideration.
True. Would you say that there are instruments which have gone so far downhill that a restoration is inadvisable? One should just keep what's left as a historical document?
Yes, some of them that have, I think, 2 points. The first point is that they are in very bad condition, that making them means almost a whole rebuild, and they are almost in original condition. So very bad, but very original. That makes a case that I think the best is not to touch them. just to document them, not to touch any cloth inside, just keeping it in a museum, not even private owners. That's not even a good idea. Anything can happen to it. I mean, if you find a very early example of a Walter or very original rookers, which never had a ravalement, never had overpainting, this and that, was never restored, which is almost impossible. But if there is something like that, it's really better not to restore it, because it has information in it that can lead us to fantastic restorations that are so accurate as possible. But if we restore it, then you have to take the cloth out, you have to take this out, that out, and then put the new material. But for example, like such a case like this, there wasn't such an original piece of leather or whatever that was taken out, even stored somewhere, and then a new piece. No. For example, the leather that I had to change, replace in the action was clearly an addition after, because it cannot work in 250, 60 years.
Right.
You know, some people already changed it, and it's quite normal. If it's already changed, it's just something that should be changed. And actually, no one was a purist actually before, like Toscan himself.
Yeah.
They got a rookers and they almost butchered it.
Almost.
Yes, yeah. Well, you know, imagine just removing the cheek, adding new keys, adding this of the bend side, which is quite. The result is remarkable. Yeah. But we can't call it vandalism. But there is absolutely no ethical strategy behind it. It's just a business. Yeah. Because he knew that he can sell it for 4 times higher price than his own instruments, which were already fantastic.
Money speaks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can think of, as a little aside, I can think of 2 cases where probably the right decision was taken. There was an auction in Zofingen in Switzerland where a John Player spinet turned up in the most appalling condition. And I think, although it was bought for quite a high price, I shouldn't think it would be restored. And then, a bit further back, when I was working with Malcolm Rose in Lewes in England, he restored a number of instruments from the Roger Murray collection, and one came with a large question mark on it. This bit had almost fallen off the cheek. There was a big gap here. The bridge of beech was so eaten by woodworm, what can one do? But what was interesting was, because it had opened up here, one could see inside how it was made, which was unusual. It was by Thomas Barton, and it's the only harpsichord that we know of him, 1709. It was probably his Meisterwerk. And a very unusual construction inside, which, if this bit had stayed in place, one would not have known about. So, and Malcolm Rose, who restored it then, or decided to restore it, took the right decision, and the instrument is now playable in the Edinburgh collection, and a couple of copies, have been made of the instrument, which I'm very pleased about. I have one at home.
Yeah, this is exactly such a case. I mean, in a case like that the bridge, as you say, was eaten by woodworms or something, it means you have to make a new bridge.
He didn't, he kept it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in case of restoration, then one has to go, the restorer has to go over the ethics and just get the money to make the thing playable. And the owner is perhaps happy with it, that it's working, but should really think, this case was not the best case for being restored. Or one thing that I don't like is to make these old instruments look shiny. Or having ideas like covering the soundboard with wax, for example. Or, I've seen these things.
Do people still do that?
Yeah. Definitely. Not everybody, but there are some who wax the soundboard. Or one of the worst things that can be so bad for such instruments, even for making instruments, I think. But okay, that is up to the maker. But for restoration, using the wrong glue, PVA glue. My colleague Paul Poletti has on his website an article about PVA glues, which gives wonderful information to instrument makers of all kinds of instruments. And he states that even on their website, the PVA glue makers like Titebond and everything, they write that it's not for structural work. They are like gum, They don't transfer the sound. So when you consider such an instrument, everywhere the right glue, which can last very long, over 1,000 years even, is there and can transfer the sound, the resonance, and it doesn't kill the sound anywhere. So the whole instrument is vibrating.
Yes.
And if it's like a gum somewhere, like the soundboard joints or the hitch-pin rail to the wall, to the bend side, anywhere being used, then it works like a gum. Can you imagine it? A piece of gum. Even with our hand, if we put our hand on a harpsichord, on the soundboard, not here of course, but on the soundboard, especially you can hear it easily on a clavichord or on a square piano. You just put one finger, 2 fingers on the instrument, and you hear the sound immediately. Is really bad, and it is more or less like that. The animal glue becomes like glass, and this is never killing the vibration. It's letting the vibration go.
And quite apart from that, it's dissolvable. If something goes wrong, you can take it apart. Exactly. But I understand with Titebond and these glues, you can't. I know this from my hobby bookbinding. I'm not allowed to use PVA glues on books before the Second World War, for example. In fact, I just restored a book which was dated 1952, and I found to my delight that in fact it was still using dissolvable glue, so I could repair it. Otherwise, it's very difficult.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and also, by the way, sanding so much, sanding the soundboard, sanding the surface of an instrument that has wonderful wood grains, and we wanted to make shiny, and then we sanded a lot, and then we can use something not shellac, not other kinds of varnishes, but something also modern to please the client. This is exactly against these ethics, and there is no police, of course, for that to take care and to shoot what you're doing.
Would a covering like a modern varnish or something affect the sound on the soundboard? Will it make the soundboard more rigid or stop it moving? Or?
The thing is, it's a very good question. The thing is that we should respect everything as it is.
Oh, yes.
And on a French harpsichord, it wasn't varnished. But when you are still in France, but in 1803, for example, and you see, or in England definitely, you see soundboards that were varnished. But those varnishes had their own principles, like we know, I learned it from Christopher Clark, that the soundboard of the 1803 era that he made a wonderful replica for the Cité de la Musique in Paris was examined. The analyze says that it was sized by fish gelatin, and then there was so-called rubo varnish on it, which contains different kinds of resins, and all this becomes like a glass, and it protects the soundboard definitely, and perhaps it even improves the sound. So who decided for that? I would respect him, and I wouldn't steal his idea, adopt it, put it on another original instrument from another period, because then it gives another restorer of 100 years later the wrong information, and he will just say, what is it on it and why? I mean, it's just pure nonsense to put these ideas in wrong places. Everything in its own place. I think that is not being a purist, but that would be simply being careful.
Mm-hmm. You say you have an excellent relationship with the owner of this instrument. Is that normal?
No, usually we have to shoot each other. No, absolutely normal. I mean, some people have their own trusted restorer, and some people are kind of generous and loyal. Some others are generous, loyal, and friendly. And he is also the friendly guy. There are some other fine restorers who have even more experience than me. He could ask them to do that, but because he's happy with the other 11 instruments that he got from me, he chose also to remain here with this with my conditions. And my conditions are sometimes not that easy, because sometimes I need more time. In this case, this one took 2 years. It doesn't mean that every day I was working on it. I was within these 2 years, I moved from the other village to this village, which is near here, Schwörstadt to Walbach, and just preparing the move with so many tools and so many fortepianos and harpsichords and machines and small parts and everything takes at least 3 months to prepare, and then putting everything in order also needs almost like 6 months. So I lost a lot of time. So he had the understanding for it, and I also didn't want to rush at all for such an instrument, and otherwise having to rush or giving deadlines. Every restorer hates deadlines. Every restorer, every painter, every maker, or even those composers who compose an opera or something. When there was something like a deadline, there could be stress. I can imagine. You can imagine how Mozart could handle. But he was a genius, of course. But he had to handle that. Writing the overture of Don Giovanni in the morning, and very fast giving to the copyists to make copies and give the orchestra, and they had to play, sight reading. That's not good. But we are artists and somewhat chaotic and not very well organized like other human beings who have studied something like to become an engineer or doctor. So we just need sometimes to think what to do. It's not a routine job. Every case I restore something, I have to just look at it and think about, and sometimes leave some time, sometimes weeks or days, to see what I should do next. Sometimes I jump to another part of the instrument and do that, and then I come back with better ideas to the other part of the instrument. It was almost like this case for restoration of the painting, which was not even easy for a painter who paints, who knows everything to do with a brush and colors and everything. Restoration is something else because you don't know what was used here. You have to try and see what gives, you know.
And perhaps during the course of restoration there are unwelcome surprises which delay things, yes.
Yeah, more or less.
Yeah, no, I just think deadlines again. My wife and our ensemble had a project which we built round the Thomas Barton harpsichord. So I ordered it. It was 3 years. Didn't make it. Malcolm was not the fastest of makers. We had to use another harpsichord at the end of the day, which in effect didn't really matter a great deal, but it would have been nice to have had the Barton for this particular program. Yeah.
Also, a friend of mine who plays the lute said that one of the best lute makers, I forgot the name, he takes 8 years to finish a lute.
Sounds a bit extreme. Yes.
It's a bit too much, but it also reveals a little bit of perfectionist character.
And I think also, I mean, I've spoken a lot about Malcolm Rose, but he was an interesting, a very fine maker and restorer, but he also had his rope. I think he was also quite a modest person, because certain things he felt other people could do better. I know in some cases he actually posted the soundboard to a certain craftsman who Malcolm felt could do the finishing work better than Malcolm. I wouldn't see the difference. And he didn't trust himself. He could have done it, making real quills. So once I was asked to do, again, an instrument from the Murray collection, and it was an original Broadwood, I think, which Roger Murray said should be in quill, and Malcolm asked me to do that. Because I've always done it. Well, not always, but, you know. So I think a degree of modesty is also very welcome.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Because one can't do everything oneself.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe some people can. But
yeah, that's why, for example, I borrow some help for the painting. And sometimes, yes, one has to, you know, when I was younger, I was lucky enough to ask many questions from Christopher Clark, and of course even now I can ask. But when you consider yourself a master already, there's no Christopher Clark for you anywhere to ask. So you don't know what to do, so you have to do something. But I was young and of course easygoing, and I could ask the master what should I do here and there. And there have been so many days in my life that I have these WhatsApp chats that I used to ask and get a wonderful answer. All these strategies, what to do, what not to do, and I'm really privileged.
Well, I hope this instrument will survive many generations. Do you, as a restorer, put your name on any part of it to say, I did this in such and such a year, or you just leave it?
Well, there are some information already online. Who knows how long they will stay there. The videos are on the YouTube channel, so it will be clear for the next generations. I don't think YouTube is going to disappear at once. I don't think so. I know you're skeptical.
I'm very skeptical about everything digital. I'm slightly older than you, so I'm not from this generation. And personally, I would trust a piece of paper.
Yeah, I would do that and put it somewhere in the drawer, perhaps even below the plexiglass.
Yes.
And I don't think anyone is going to even clean the dust below it, so it will remain with the instrument.
I suspect that it will last longer than digital, because one's already talking about everything will have to be redone as a new technique comes. And an ever increasing amount of information. Do you do everything, digitalize everything, or do you say, oh no, that's not important, we'll leave that away? And perhaps in 50 years one will say, well, pity we don't have that any longer. It could have been quite.
But both can be ruined or get lost. The physical paper,
of course,
and the digital information. But I think if we put both of them, at some point it doesn't matter anymore after 50 years or 500 years if someone remembers me, I restored it or not, because the main art was done by the maker himself, who really made it. I was just I had this privilege I have the privilege to own so many wonderful instruments and restore them, and including this one.
Yes.
And this one is a very special one because
indeed
it is provincial and it is French. I am also very French, even though I was born in a different part of the world, in Tehran. But I love French Baroque music, and especially French solo harpsichord music. And I had only a little time to record something with Simone Pierini. He also played solo, and we played together. I played Bach and Leclerc together with this instrument before it leaves. But basically I'm very happy that it's going to be not in a room all the time. It's going to be borrowed for concerts and recordings. I also restored, for example, Carl Lemme fortepiano from 1796 for him, and he has recorded a very interesting CD of a very little known composer of Brunswick, and the details, and he has done an excellent research about this maker, who was Carl Lemme from his clavichord, who
made the same family.
The same person. Yeah, the same person who made the clavichord. Yeah, exactly, that clavichord, which has a double soundboard. The laminated soundboard. That instrument.
Which collapsed.
Well, I have seen laminated soundboards which haven't collapsed.
Yes, I think I've read what Lemme himself thought about his marvellous invention, that actually one doesn't need braces or any longer. But of course, the instrument is proof of the pudding. And I owned for a time one of the few copies of this instrument, made in 1929, by Otto Marx, who I could talk for hours about. It was one of the unsung heroes of the Restoration world. He wasn't allowed to sign instruments, so one doesn't know about him so much. But he made beautiful instruments. He made them with a different idea. I mean, one copies instruments today for performers to play on. Then he said it was more to copy instruments that the museum had a copy, and they could put their original in storage. It's a slightly different approach, but he copied very exactly, and I'm happy to say that he didn't copy the laminated soundboard, but gave it a
normal sound with bracing.
With bracing, yes, and the instrument sounds very fine. It's now in Cologne, in a collection there.
1920s.
He was working for the piano workshop of Carl Pfeiffer in Stuttgart, and his speciality was making reproductions of early fortepiano mechanics. That's how he started. And Carl Pfeiffer had himself a collection which later went to, where did it go? To Nuremberg, I think. And he was involved in restoring instruments for Pfeiffer. And very interesting. man. And stop me if I'm talking too much about him, but
it's fine.
he retired. His first retirement was just after restoring Mozart's Walter.
Mm-hmm.
He carried on and had a second retirement at well over 80 when and his swan song, shall we say, was the restoration of the Aarhus Ruckers harpsichord, which Gustav Leonhardt recorded his first Froberger on a year later. It was a very fine recording. And then he retired.
Mm-hmm.
And died a couple of years later. That was his life.
Mm-hmm. I hope he liked to keep the original soundboards
I imagine.
for restoration.
I
Because some of them, for example, the one who restored this Karl Lemme fortepiano, he was curator in Berlin, and he died, I think, 15 years ago.
mm-hmm.
And Mr. Rase, if I'm not mistaken, and he removed the soundboard, the original soundboard.
It happens.
Yeah, and it could be somewhere in the museum, or maybe it's lost, or the original Stein soundboard from Bad Krotzingen. When you remember, why should the soundboard, nearly any kind of soundboard in any terrible condition,
mm-hmm.
unless it's
Yeah.
torn completely or parts of it not there. If it's almost there, it is always possible
Yeah.
to re-glue everything,
Yep.
and if a little bit of it is missing, still it doesn't
Yes.
ruin the historical value if you just add like 2 millimeters of wood like this to it, and then glue it with the animal glue, reversible, good for the
Yes.
sound. This is So this, I was saying that Peter Carson is someone who takes care of these instruments and has passion, and he just doesn't only collect. And he did a great research about Karl Lemme, and we found out that there was a kind of competition between Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach and this guy to become the organist in Braunschweig or some. I don't remember exactly. Anyway, they accepted Karl Lemme and not Carl Philipp. And according to his research, it was mostly because he was an organ maker too. He could tune the organ, and he could do the maintenance of the organ and play. So Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach was, with all his genius, was less interesting for them. So I mean, Karl Lemme, it shows that Karl Lemme was definitely a very interesting character, who was a very fine instrument maker, fine organ player.
Yeah.
And I've seen even a clavichord, a photo that only Peter Carson has. I can perhaps ask him to send the photos to you from another Karl Lemme clavichord that it's actually in good condition. It's in a museum. I don't know, I think perhaps also in Braunschweig. It's written that he is Karl Lemme, the organ maker, the organ player. He refers to his job as his position as an organ player too, and it's quite interesting to do all these researches as a collector. Every project that begins, every instrument you purchase, then you do the research on it. And he didn't even find his information by Googling. He went to the old archives and really turned pages, and this is his own mother language, so it was also easy for him to do that. But he invested many hours, of course, without being paid a cent for all this. So there are really good collectors, and there are sometimes also bad collectors who are unfriendly with restorers, or they don't pay them enough, or they collect and they just abandon the instrument somewhere in a barn, where it's in a really terrible condition. They don't know, they don't have any plan. I don't know. I've seen some of these, and they're very proud of being a collector. It's not a virtue to be just a collector. You have to take some responsibilities for what.
Well, it's not just collectors. I can think of one instrument which is present. You've seen it. It's in my collection. It's a Pantalon clavichord, probably from the Brunswick area, and it survived in a fairly original but half ruinous state until the late 20th century. It was in the Michael Thomas collection, and then the history gets a bit foggy, but it ended up in Vienna and was finally sold to a schoolmaster who threw out part of the Pantalon mechanism and the original soundboard. Fortunately, before he threw it out, he took a photograph from above. So when we were restoring it, because his own soundboard was just unusable, it was the wrong scaling, everything was badly made. I went to a photocopy shop and said, blow up this photograph to this dimensions, and they did it. In those days they could do that, and then one could see it's a perfect brass scaling. One could see, because of repairs, where the braces were, and my restorer, Karin Richter, made the soundboard accordingly, and the instrument is playable. But the second Pantalon, which was still in existence in Michael Thomas's collection in the 1970s, it's described as a Celestine, so it's probably covered in leather or cloth tangents. It had two Pantalon mechanisms, and the one we can only speculate on. The one has been reconstructed and works well. Who knows? Yeah. And I have another interesting clavichord which survived through neglect, not wanting to do any more about it. It had its worst condition possibly after it was auctioned on the death of a priest in Norway, although it's a German instrument, and the whole lot was auctioned, including the instrument, and a farmer bought everything, job lot. And the son restored this clavichord. He left the Pantalon mechanism as it was, but the soundboard he replaced, but he replaced it well. We discovered this when we took the soundboard out, because it had suffered a bit over the years, and it was written underneath. This was made by me, 1877. I mean, a time when restoring early keyboard instruments was not really one's priority, but perhaps in a farmer it was the only keyboard instrument they had. I'll make it playable. And the bridge is original, he kept the bridge and replaced the soundboard well, right thicknesses. He obviously looked at what he was doing. And
they were absolutely able.
Yes, of course.
They were able.
And this soundboard now is older than the original one would have been, when it collapsed apparently. Yeah, and it was in very bad condition, but we decided, that's my restorer, Karin and I, that it's stupid to put a new soundboard in. She felt she could restore it, so we did.
Yeah. This is also another restoration tactic too. Respect also the other stages of the life of the instrument that had behind it. Also the past restorations, which you can respect. Sometimes there is no way to respect. For one of the soundboards that one of the most beautiful square pianos that I have had, I mean, there are plenty of thick wood glued underneath. You know, if you just see the photo, I mean, there are many pieces, and it's in terrible, terrible condition, and I can't say, okay, this is an old restoration, I would keep it.
Yes,
You have to
I have such a square piano.
You have to unglue everything and try to fix the whole thing. Yes.